Hello, thank you for downloading, listening to, and watching the Lean Into Artcast. This is a show where two visual storytellers get together, talk about different things that they engage with in this endeavor of communicating with images. We think hard about this stuff, so you will too. My name is Jerzy Drozd. I am a cartoonist and a teaching artist, and the other host is...
Hi, I am Rob Stenzinger. I am a user experience designer, and I also make video games.
Clearly stated. So we usually, if you're new to the show, we try to come up with a single topic and kind of do like a drill down on it, like just talk about it for an hour or so, and spend half of the show thinking about what it looks like when we're engaging with that particular subject. And then in the second half of the show, we think about why this subject is so fascinating to us and what kind of questions does it raise for us when we're wrestling with it or engaging with it. And this week, Rob, I have a topic for you.
Yeah, I like it when you have a topic. It's good.
You had a big one last week. If people missed last week's episode where you gave us your whole methodology for researching at events, that was a great one.
Oh, well, thanks. It's fun to share and get reactions and dig into it. Get outside of my get into a fresh context, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons why we practice this stuff, right? I mean, the show is in service of other folks into this kind of thing. And I mean, we have a lot of investment in it as well, just in the experience we gain in sharing this stuff. Which is, I mean, now you instigated this topic, right?
Yes, which isn't quite so systematic. As a matter of fact, it's almost anti-systematic. So I think something we talked about on the show before is I like to use YouTube as like Spotify. While I'm working, I'm playing YouTube in the background, and I'll let its algorithms suggest things to me, and I'll try them out, and then it sometimes lead me down these little rabbit holes where suddenly I'm just listening to Christopher Hitchens for 4 hours without even knowing that I wanted to listen to Christopher Hitchens that morning. There's been talk lately about whether or not that's a good thing, that the algorithms are deciding what we want before we know we want it. But for in the case of having background stuff wash over me while I'm focused on my drawing, I don't think it's all that terribly harmful. And usually if it's something that's really wacky, I could turn it off. So, but this came up in my recommendations just a week or two ago. And it was on a YouTube channel called Proco. Many of our listeners have probably heard of this. And as a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this came up during one of our conversations with Brandon Dayton, because it kind of relates to Kim Jung-ji's the illustration that he does where he just starts drawing in the upper left-hand corner and starts basically filling out the drawing without any underdrawings, like a printer. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. It leaves an impression. You're like, I would have had to have really planned that out. How in the world is this person doing multiple objects in complex perspective, just from top left to bottom right? It's mind-boggling. So
this fella, we will link to this in the show notes, because I'm not playing the audio for a variety of reasons, because of the YouTube, the channel ID thing, where I don't want this video to get taken down because we're using somebody else's audio. But he's an artist who worked with artists of the caliber of Jack Kirby and Mobius. And Jack Kirby, there's a story about the way he drew in some of his biographies where he literally would start in the upper left-hand corner and just like a printer, just fill out the page. No underdrawings, just go straight to regular pencil. And I remember reading those in his biographies going that feels like embellishment. That feels like I'm not saying that they're liars, but I'm not sure if I'm buying it wholesale, right? I'm not going to take that just
it's at least a little bit of a tall tale kind of thing.
It felt like it.
Okay.
So, but this video that I was just playing, and again, Meditation for Artists, the Automatic Drawing Technique. The man they're interviewing, he claims that he thinks that not only is it true because he worked with Kirby, he said he saw it. He said, but he thinks that he was capable of it because he did this exercise every day, this automatic drawing technique. And I'll try to summarize his points. I really encourage people to go watch the video and listen to him describe it. Oh, Troy Shadowing Tronics is saying there are videos of Kirby drawing on YouTube if I want to check that theory. Yeah, I'll have to follow up and see if there's any veracity to that. Anyway, but what this guy does is he just starts throwing lines down on the paper with no agenda. And as he's describing his process, I was reminded a lot of my experience with meditation, having done mindful meditation in the past. And we could talk more about that in the second half of the show. But as he's throwing down these lines, he's talking about how he doesn't have a purpose in mind when he's drawing. He's drawing purely to clear his head, get it out of his head. This is a warm-up where there's no objective, right? Which sounds weird, right? Like you're just going to scribble? Is that what you're going to do? And when you watch the guy work and hear his process, I was like, all right, I have to try this. And I've been doing it for a little bit. And so I thought I would share some of my early observations on the show. But before we do that, how about we just do a quick demo of this?
That sounds good. I want to dig into this all over the place.
I'm into it all.
I don't know about this. Because our topic. Jeez,
sorry.
Come in.
Sprung it on you.
Here we go. You gonna talk back to me, Rob? Boom. Dragon Ball. Take it. I'm like, okay, fine. But
all right. So how about I start? I'll do a few minutes of this. And then if you want to, you can do a few minutes. What do you say?
That sounds good.
And once again, I apologize to the people who listen to this primarily in audio. This is going to be one where you're going to want to watch a little bit, but we'll try to give color commentary where we can.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've got a sketchbook out, and
I got yeah.
You're doing what looks like gesture drawing to me. Do you have an object?
Yeah.
Do you have a topic in mind?
So that's the thing that I was trying to do as I was playing with this. Is I noticed that my brain automatically starts to try to say oh, hey, I'm seeing a
person leaning at readiness in a way, right? And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, maybe it's a tree. Now it's a mountain, and it's more. And I don't mean to mess up your process by commenting too much. But
no. Please do. As a matter of fact, I suspect that talking will actually make this easier because I can't attend to.
So it's like okay. So you got a sideways fire and or meteorite and or skull barfing.
Well,
I can't.
That's just it. That's just it. I'm trying not to interpret any forms.
Yeah,
the moment I start to see,
I mean, like these, what you drew could equally be turned into any of the things that I described.
So what I'm doing is when I notice myself beginning to see a form and starting to attend to it, I'm like, okay, shift gears, draw a different kind of line.
So this is interesting. It reminds me of other things I've seen as far as the technique, but I feel like I should hold off on this until the second half. But just in
I should say also what I'm using a pencil I don't typically use for drawing. Is I got a Palomino Blackwing that my wife got me because she really likes those pencils, and I scoffed. I said, wooden pencils, what do you think I am? I only use the Pentel Twist Erase, right? And I'm a brand loyal, but this is great for doing.
Which is no longer offered in you sit upon a throne with a secret compartment of Pentel Twist Erase pens, right?
Yeah, I'm sitting on them like a dragon. Yes. But I mean, like using a wooden pencil is great because I can go in for like some fine line stuff, and then I can also go in for some soft shading.
You're using the side of the pencil as frequently, if not more frequently, than the tip of the pencil,
which I typically don't do, actually.
And you're doing that thing it seems like it's like very ergonomic and free flowing, where when you really hold like far back on the pencil.
Oh yeah, I'm not. This is my normal stance. I'm usually really tight on the top, but I'm actually holding the pencil like 3/4 of the way back, and I'm just, which gives it more. I don't know. I'm not an art teacher, but for me, it makes it feel more free. I'm not like a college art teacher. I teach like kids comics classes. You know, I always get like a little bit insecure and uncomfortable when we start talking about like art technique. Like, I don't know. I just do it this way.
Interesting. So let's see. From what I hear, that kind of holding back in the position that you have the pencil in your hand, it leads to more free flowing, less shake in your lines.
Feels that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'll just fill a page for like 20 minutes at the start of the day. And
so you really feel that you're not doing something that's algorithmic at all?
If anything is algorithmic that's happening, it's happening in the back of my head. I'm intentionally trying not to attend to it. I'm intentionally trying to divert my attention and say like, well, do another shape now because you started to make a form out of that.
Do you have a fight going on in your brain?
Yes.
Because you are making forms and then you stop making a form over and over, right?
Yep. There's definitely a battle going on, and I could show you some of my earlier attempts. So here's one that like it really started to take some forms, and I was like fighting it the whole way through. Like, don't make forms, don't
it's
make
like
forms.
A mountain made of Stonehenge, and then some, right? Ancient cities.
Yeah, like the city started to just pop up, like right there, right, and up here, and like mountainside.
There's a modern city. There's an ancient city. There's
And then as I started to fight with it, I was like, okay, now I'll draw some diagonal lines. I'm like, wow, they started to turn to like diagonal rock formations coming out. I can't tell if that's even showing up. Yeah, diagonal rock formations coming out of the side of the mountain. You know, the second attempt, little more free form. I feel like it came out a little more chaotic and a little less organized.
Yeah.
So,
but there's kind of there's like I don't know, let's say like a 5-story Tremors worm shouting at like a birthday cake, kind of.
Let's just do an audiobook of you just interpreting my sketchbook. So do you want to try, Rob, for a few minutes and give it a shot and see how that battle feels?
Yeah, sure. I can try. This will be interesting because my approach has been very different than what you're describing. All right. So, if I go to natural media, so is this only a digital thing or a natural media thing for you?
So far.
Okay.
I haven't tried doing it on my tablet. It seems like it would be fairly intuitive to do it that way as well.
All right. I think I can do it easier on my tablet than, yeah. So I'm going to do that. And then, anyway, you see some prior efforts there. Because in the idea of like drawing to relax, sketching to relax, that to me is a little bit like what you were doing, and a little bit not like what you were doing. So, having a like an agenda of not knowing the direction or outcome is, I think that's common ground. But then I let an algorithm happen and would keep going. So, I mean, so for me, the
so these cards that we're looking at on the desk, these are prior attempts.
Yeah, these are prior attempts. So what I did here with these 6 attempts was more than, so I've noticed that my heart rate goes down when I draw. When I sit down and draw, doesn't matter what I'm working on, my heart rate goes down. And I feel very focused and calm, just patient and curious, and they're like, yeah, I can get frustrated sometimes, but like for the most part, it's pretty relaxing, just drawing it overall for me. So I'm trying to figure out where my camera is. I will, what I did with these is
it looks like a Pac-Man level.
Yeah, I took a bit of an algorithmic approach where I thought, okay, I'm picking up a thick marker and I'm going to do like boundaries and see where it goes. And it's going to be maze-ish, right? So it's like that's the algorithm right there. And then I just started with, and I kept doing it until making these shapes until I filled the page.
That's great.
And then I did quick quick lines in little sections until I filled the little page. And I was hoping to do a little more prep for this week and get to larger pages, because I was curious if the effect is different. But essentially running a simple algorithm of like, I'm going to start with a region and react to it, or it's going to be a maze and I stick to that, or this one is just pure dots but then with clusters, right? Make clusters occasionally.
Okay.
And so you end up with patterns. But then this is like sort of doodle flowers, but sometimes with 6, sometimes with 8, sometimes with 3 or 4, 5 different.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And that's really it. And so it reminded me too of like some of the things that I do to section and organize sketch notes when I take notes when I'm trying to sort of capture a live event as it's happening. I will make shapes in some patterns to organize the drawing. So let's see. But what you were doing was fascinating, because it kind of seemed similar to me, where you were. All right, I'm just gonna go.
So a contour just goes right down on there, like an open shape, and then you begin to start closing that shape. And then what's happening?
I don't know.
And suddenly we have little tiny monster. We have grasping hand. We have what looks like. See, I think this is part of what makes this so fascinating, is we cannot help but look for those patterns, right? Like we're just conditioned to do it. Like I forget what that effect is called, where like you can't help but see patterns in anything. Like you see carpeting, you see faces in the carpeting.
Sure, observer expectancy.
So I feel like that's and Carrie's in the chat. Mushin Girl is agreeing that like the battle is ongoing when you're doing this. If you're trying to have truly have no agenda and just throwing lines down in a it's different than scribbling, right? It's you're not scribbling. You're drawing contours, you're drawing form, you're drawing shading, and you're using lines thoughtfully. But it's not, the goal is not to make a thing, which is way harder than I thought it would be. It's like, that sounds relaxing, I should give that a try. And then I started trying it, and then you saw what the results were. You saw like those things that started to take form. And as Rob goes, I am impressed that I cannot determine what some of these forms are. They're just forms right now. Just doing some overlapping contours with some very Stenzinger-esque angly texture lines inside. All right, so you changed gears there. So now you're doing a whole bunch of overlapping. Is this part of the algorithm?
Yeah, well, I noticed a contour that I thought, oh, goop could flow down that contour. And yeah, I mean, it really does. You don't have to stick to one algorithm, but like to me, like the algorithm is a little bit freeing, where it's just sort of you see what happens. Sort of like I'm literally just thinking about this portion of the drawing, and seeing what emerges,
and then reacting to the trail that you left. So believe it or not, so when you drew that little, like, so you drew what became this little valley in the middle of the card, right? The index card. And then you started saying like, oh, this contour looks like a hill that goop could flow down. I have found that sometimes that's what laying out of a comics page feels like. It's like I throw down something that just feels right, and then I just react to that with the rest of the page.
I think that's a huge part of a generally productive creative process, is being able to generate and create relationships, amend the generative process with relationships and meaning, and then from there refine it.
Now, we're talking about sketching to relax. Typically, this would be something we would be doing on our own and not having a conversation while doing it, right? Or have you been when you're doing these?
No, I actually had James Burke Connections on in the background.
I've been doing mine at coffee shops, just sitting by myself.
But you do have...
I have some ambient noise around me, yes. Up. I'm seeing creatures again.
I know, can't help it. It's like a turkey with a tie or a...
Always a turkey with a tie.
Yep. So, yeah, what do you think?
I think that demonstrates the idea. And there's like, I like that we both got to show how different it looks when different artists do it. I found another one that I did that I felt like I was more successful in just getting the forms and not creating any coherence between them.
Yeah. Wow.
And this was one I remember this morning where I was working on it. I felt like, well, start with some forms that you enjoy drawing, but don't complete it. Like as soon as you got like the basic form done, move on, do something else, right?
So, I mean, there's a little bit of algorithm going on there. A couple of rules, and then you run the rules, right?
Sort of. I would push back on the term algorithm. Well, maybe not. Well, let's explore that in the second half. You want to take a break and then go to the second half of the show and talk about, what we just did and how we react to it, having done it?
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Okay.
Natural time. All right.
Natural time. We did the demos. So this is the first half. We show what it looks like. The second half, we talk about why this is so interesting to us. And yes, we have a live chat going on. So if you guys have any questions, thoughts, or wonderings that you want to add for us to tackle in the second half, now would be the time to do it, because we're going to take a break for 1 minute and 30 seconds to thank some people who make this show possible. And those people happen to be the folks who support us on Patreon. Yes, patreon.com/leanintoart is the website. What is it? It's a way for you to give us a monthly upvote to say, hey, I believe in Jerzy and Rob. I believe in what they do. I want to make sure it's more sustainable. So I'm going to give them as little as $1 a month, and it adds up. And we appreciate everybody who does that. And we want to thank 5 people who have been doing that right now. First, Greg Horvath. Man, I'm sorry, Greg. I trip on it every time. It's Greg Horvath. And you can find Greg on Twitter at IGMHORV77. And Chris Watkins. Thank you, Chris, for believing in us and what we do. And Gail Bushman. Find Gail Bushman on Facebook at Nightingale Art, like the bird. And Merjam. Thank you, Merjam, for supporting us. You can find Merjam on Twitter at MYRJAMVDV. We will link to these in the show notes. And finally, Sophie Lawson. Thank you, Sophie, for believing in us and what we do. You can find Sophie on Twitter at Sophie Lawson Art. And you can join them at patreon.com/leanintoart, where we will find every show that we make, as well as the extra leans. The shows we record only for people who support us on Patreon. And those posts become an open mic post where you can chat with about whatever you want. You can take the conversation in any direction. It becomes an open mic post where you can chat with just fellow leaners who, like the show as much as you do. Patreon.com/leanintoart is the website. Thank you to everybody who's been supporting us there.
Yeah, it really means a lot to us. Thanks.
Okay. I need music for the second half of the show. Here we go. Yeah, heavy duty last time. Let's do it again. Ooh. So, where do you want to go?
So tell me more about how it isn't an algorithm.
Well, the moment I said it out loud, I thought, well, maybe it is kind of an algorithm in a way. So I think it might be useful here
to the literalness of it, or the feeling of it, right? Because I'm expecting maybe that's where the difference lies, where maybe it feels organic, but isn't like you can get there with some rules.
Yeah, I think it's more algorithm in terms of methodology, not algorithm in terms of what's happening on the page. So in that sense, the algorithm is affecting what goes down on the page. So it can't help but be a product of algorithm. Oh boy, I'm starting to talk like that. All right, let me back up and just explain like the approach that I'm coming to with this is that I'm reminded of my experiences having done mindful meditation. And
Mhm.
um, I remember when I first started out, like a lot of us do when we first start out doing, like, where you're sitting in, like, either crisscross applesauce, or you're sitting like lightning posture, whatever. Like you're sitting quietly and your eyes are closed and you're focusing your breathing, and usually you're focused on your attention's on your head or on your stomach or some other chakra. You're focusing on something, and like you're supposed to let thoughts just glide by, right? And I remember when I first started out, I was like, oh, a thought. Oh, I failed. Oh, another thought. I failed. Now I'm thinking about how I failed. I failed 3 times over, and I got really frustrated with it. Right? When is the inner peace going to happen? And then it wasn't until I did it a lot more that I realized, and read more about it, that I realized that no, it's about just like letting the thoughts happen and fly by, so you become just like a clear piece of glass for the thoughts to flow through, and they're not affecting you anymore. That's where the peace comes. It's not silence. It's being still in all the noise, right?
Hmm.
And so when I started doing this exercise of just throwing lines down without any agenda, it's the same battle was happening of when I was a young man starting out trying to do mindful meditation. This idea of, oh, it's a form. Let's start turning it into a form. No, don't turn it into a form. You're not supposed to do that. Take it back. Do something else, right? So algorithmic, yes, in the sense that I'm gently trying to nudge myself back off of the tracks because I keep trying to find tracks. It's a natural movement as I'm making a drawing, right? I'm looking to find order. And so I use the algorithm of, when you start to see a form, do another line. Let that thought happen. It's gone. Now do another line. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm not trying to reduce it to something that isn't like, I don't know, elegant and exciting and appealing, and I don't know, just or even reduce the emotional aspect of this. It's that I think it's actually inclusive and approachable to notice that you can have an intention. So what you're just you're I think your algorithm has a lot of flexible, um well, let's see, a lot of, like, you can really negotiate with yourself a lot about on this, where mine is it was a lot more specific, right? Yours is more general, and it's this idea that, okay, it's, naturally forms will start to happen. They'll be recognized, and then they need to be diverted from, or diverged from. And I think Motion Girl mentioned something in the chat, that where she's emphasizing that it's a constant course correction, and that's another way to look at it, instead of a battle.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. That
Whatever,
was the big difference.
inclusive metaphor, feels approachable, right? But I
Right, right.
mean, a battle can work too if you have this sense of like desire to, I don't know, comply and discover and adjust and see the change happen quickly, right? And then you notice you're not doing it, and then, I don't know, depends on how severe you are as far as mm, talking to yourself.
Right, right. And that was when I noticed how the whole my relationship with it changed, both when I talk about like when I more seriously pursued mindful meditation, and what we are describing today
Mm.
is the moment I stopped thinking of it as a fight, but thinking of it as a gentle, like, there you go again, Jers. You tried to make a form, do something else, right? It's I think of it now as like a gentle reminder or a nudge of like, up, up, up. You're falling into a rut again. Move over here, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so I would agree that it is an algorithm in the sense that I have a pattern that I use to course correct. And the pattern is, the moment I see a form, change gears. And the hope is that with enough practice, this will become a very natural thing to do. As mindful meditation became, like when I was pursuing it very seriously, it didn't take long for me to get into that headspace of just letting the thoughts happen.
So, because and part of your reason for this is not just the relaxation, right? I mean, so part of it is it's almost the because to me, I see a lot of value in um, just the immediate physical effect and calmly drawing and putting lines on a paper um, that could be reacted to at some point, saying like, "Oh, that reminds me of something. I'm going to do another drawing about what that reminds me of, or what have you." It's almost like your own random generator of new thought, new ideas. But you've got like this next, you know, um, I mean, is this an exploration? Is this an expectation about the whole arriving at that being able to fill a page of
Uh,
from
maybe,
top down to
maybe.
top left to bottom right, kind of
Oh,
like
well,
Kirby,
no,
right?
no. This isn't me trying to. I wouldn't. I almost feel like it'd be presumptuous of me to say like, and then if I do this enough, I'll be able to do what Kirby did, right? Because like we're not the same people. I don't know what else was going on in that man's brain to make him be able to
Okay.
do that if he could do that, right? That's not the goal. The goal was is that as I heard the guy in the YouTube video, again, we'll link to it in the show notes, talking about why he was doing it. I was like, that sounds like a good kind of warm up. Um,
Hmm.
in that, a lot of artists do warm-up drawings of some sort or another. Now, I can't speak for every artist in the world. I don't know what is happening in everybody's studio, but you do see on things like Instagram, on Twitter, on all social media, artists sharing today's warm-up in air quotes, right? Here's a warm-up I did today, warm-up sketch, and often it'll be like some magnificent drawing, right? Because like they nailed it today and they wanted to share it. I totally get it.
I baked
And
a little something, and it's
like,
like some kind of amazing, super fancy cake or whatever, and you're like, "Oh, wow." It's, it's not like rolls from a can. Okay.
right,
We have
right.
different definitions of little something. Yeah.
And I
Little
have
warm-up.
noticed that when I'm doing quote unquote warm up drawings, that thought is there. That thought is like I noticed that my warm ups started to take up, and again, because we track what we do. I tracked in my emergent task planner how long these warm ups are taking, and I observed these things are taking more and more time. Uh, why are they taking more and more time? Because as I'm doing it, I'm no longer treating it as this way to get my arm limber and to get my brain, like dump all the stuff out of my brain. I'm using it as something that makes another snackable, shareable thing to keep that social media heartbeat going, right?
Mm.
Um, and that changes the relationship with the drawing altogether, right? When you start thinking of it as something that is going to be witnessed by outside observers versus something that's entirely for me. I noticed that less and less of my drawings in my sketchbook were for me. Like it was a smaller percentage of my sketchbook, and more of my sketchbook was getting shared. Um, and while there was a relaxing element to doing those drawings in my sketchbook, there was a relaxing element in that I was drawing something purely for my own pleasure. I was drawing it without the agenda of um, communicating a lot of complex ideas. It was just like, I want to draw a Baron von Bear fighting a snow monster. Fun, right? Something that's fun and easy for me to do.
Yeah.
Um, but there'll also be like a sense of practice to it too. It's like, oh, and I'm going to practice watercoloring while I'm doing this.
Well, I mean,
This,
it's
yeah,
there's a tension from what I'm hearing between like the personal there. It's almost maybe it's a quadrant where it's personal versus public, and then um, practice versus performance.
yes, yeah, thank you. That's a great way of thinking about it. Is a crosshairs like that with like different quadrants of intention and I mean, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to see how that would affect your relationship with the drawing. Um,
Oh, that is an interesting quadrant. So,
is Rob building an infograph for us while we're doing the show?
um, yeah, maybe I should switch to my camera here. Let's just quickly react to that, to this idea.
Okay.
Screen share and app window, and this is fascinating. This one. Okay. So then if, okay, let's see here. All right. So you have performance or practice. Is it personal or is it public? Right. So what would be in each of these quadrants, right? Like personal performance is almost like singing in the shower or whatever. Right.
Yep. Or like dashing off 5 quick ink drawings first thing in the morning, right? In that video, the what site is this? This is Proco. He even talks about Mobius doing these contour warm-ups with watercolor and ink. And I'm like, now you're just showing off. But that would be like personal performance.
But with enough
right?
practice, you develop new capacity that allows you to practice in different ways, right?
Right.
So public performance is share it, right?
Yep. Draw it live. Stream it on Instagram.
Oh yeah, public. Oh, that's So yeah, totally drawing live, public performance, and then sharing. Like sharing a drawing would be the public practice. And then it's sort of the is your public practice, rough around the edges, or is it super polished? That's that's a different thing. But then personal practice is, how's that different than personal performance?
Oh, that would be life drawing, right? Doing studies of objects. Like, so if I'm trying to figure out Amazon Academy is a webcomic that I work on, and we recently had a couple pages with a flying horse in it. And so I did a lot of doodles of horses, right? That I didn't share with anybody. That was personal practice. Like, how do those freaking legs work, right?
Yeah. So you're developing your knowledge, developing your skills. More specifically, the personal performance could have like this flamboyance, indulgence, other aspects that may not yield the direct applicable effort. Okay, thanks for indulging me on this exercise.
No, that's great. That's a great way of thinking about if you could send me a scan of that so I can put it in the show notes, that'd be great.
Okay.
I think that's a really nice framework for thinking about the different, reasons we make stuff. I want to read a comment from Mark Nelson in the chat. It says, so making non-objective lines is the point of focus, and diverging into objective forms is an opportunity to return to the focused non-objective mark making. That's a way of thinking about it, right? Like non-objective lines, meaning lines that don't add up to things, that don't add up to representational imagery, more abstract imagery, right? And then if it starts to take shape, it's like, well, I just reminded myself to don't make shape.
So what yields a better experience? Is it about the playfulness of going up to the edge, knowing that forms will start to take shape, right? Because that's where I'm like, I see a form and now I want to play with it, and then I'll run away from it. But I want to play with it first, right? Like goop going down the thing, or it's like, yeah, this is definitely a claw. I'm going to make it more of a claw, and then I'll stop and I'll run away, right?
I guess that sounds similar to my experience in that, like, when we look at this piece, I have forms here that have branches coming off of them, like literal tree branches, right? And that was me saying, like, I'm going to diverge. I've got a form, but like, let's diverge and do something that feels more like branch-like. They're turning into branches. All right, let's let them be branches for a little bit and let's move on, right? But let's not try to make any cohesion out of this image. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and there's
I
even a
think there's
side.
like that can be a playful aspect of this, where if you want to add, like how close do you want to walk up to the forms?
Mhm.
Do you want to
But
stay pretty far?
but at the same time, I would like to eventually get to the point where like virtually no thought is like resting in my mind. Like having
Ah,
done that with mindful meditation, like that fluid state of just like thoughts are just happening, and I'm just like letting them flow in and out. Right. Um,
mm,
that sounds, that would be, if I were to state a goal, that sounds like as close to a goal as I can come up with for this.
hmm. Um, let's see. What um what about more about why we do this? And I'm wondering if also this might a really good final thought. I'm highlighting something in the notes.
Oh, what are you highlighting in the notes? Okay.
Yeah,
I let's do that as final thought.
yeah.
Before we get to final thought, I want to talk about one more thing I noticed about doing this
Okay.
is we talk a lot in the show about optimizing whittling, right?
Yep.
How to like the hard truth is that for most of us, we don't have 6 hour chunks every day to pursue this stuff. We have to do it in these like stolen hours, stolen half hour. Maybe we're doing it in a parking lot while we're waiting for somebody to come out of a store or come out of work, right?
Yep.
Um, and we've also explored how that can create all sorts of different kinds of frustrations, and that frustration can build over time and create like a sense of an unfortunate sense of anxiety around your whittling. The, the the whittling can seem to be moving along so incrementally, and there whatever progress you're making seems so, you know, small by what you want, by your it doesn't meet your desire, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so you could
So
have oh, sad whittling, or or anxious whittling,
yep.
or urgent stressful whittling.
And I I think for the most part, I'm a fairly relaxed and mellow guy for the most part. But when it comes to comics, I get really, really anxious. When it comes to deadlines, I get very anxious. Um, why else would I have an ETP? Why else would I use Gantt charts and spreadsheets to keep track of my progress, right? Unless I was thinking about it all the time. And I noticed that when I would show up to work and get to my desk with with an anxious state of mind, or a frustrated or a sad state of mind, it affects the work. I'm not as efficient when I'm working in that mindset. I don't think that uh, that's not a bombshell, right?
Sure.
Nobody's going, "What the heck you say?" Um, but that's all to say that I found that doing this 20-minute thing, it did. It had the nice benefit of calming me the heck down, and it also had that muscle memory thing of like, there's something about, in my experience anyway, there's something about just throwing the lines down, even when you're doing like a real drawing. Like if you stand there and think about it's not going to be good, or I'm not going to make it good, then in that first line doesn't happen, the drawing is not going to happen. You have to throw down that first line, which is sort of like an acceptance that nope, it won't be perfect. And here we go, you know.
Mm.
Um, And something about doing that warm up kind of connected me with that threshold a lot faster, or a lot faster. I would say a lot more gracefully, right? Um, and then like from a broader sense, I think I would love to get your input on this, Rob. I expect you'll back me up that adding a pause button to our day is probably like a good idea all the way around. Like if we can introducing some kind of pause button between us and expressing how we feel, right? Having 20 minutes to say like, well, before I express how I feel today, let me do this just as a
Uh,
sense of practice.
yeah, I think it's pretty well proven. You think about the what is it? Is it the Kahneman research regarding thinking fast and thinking slow, right?
Mm.
And just the idea of if you add just a little bit more pause in day-to-day conversation and other actions, you will do more thoughtful things. And um, you know, that what you're describing seems to be just in a way another form of that, but like weaving it into like a specific way to apply it. It's not just taking a breath between hearing something and then saying something in response. It's I mean, it's really, I mean, it's applying that as like a tool to practice for, visual expression, which it just happens to be that, oh, some raw component of visual expression is like a resource on its own, just making lines on the page, but then you get rid of the agenda of you get rid of the your typical agenda, which is goal oriented, probably efficiency minded in some way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that I think has another clever angle on it too, which you get the immediate benefit, but like you also get some like sort of reconnection with the raw, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
if you want to
like
back out even further, like if you look at the way children draw, right?
hmm,
Like watch a kid draw, and they don't necessarily have an agenda. One of the things that I have to teach in my comics classes all the time is write the words first, then draw the balloon. Right? Because we all did this, or a lot of us did this when we were kids, right? And then they're like, oh crud, now I gotta, like, I don't have enough room to fit all my cool dialogue in because I didn't plan this out. And a lot of what I'm doing is teaching young people to plan out art. Right? It's like the way a child draws is like they don't have a plan because they're just figuring it out.
yeah, well,
There's
and yeah, and it can be, you can run into friction when you're both goal oriented and also fully reacting moment to moment, because now you've created unintentional constraints that what you were trying to create doesn't fit within. So
Mhm.
that's no, that's it. That I feel like that's empowering. I don't think that's taking away something, right? So these things
Yeah.
can coexist. But honestly, saying that drawing without the agenda, drawing with the agenda, they're not mutually exclusive. They probably help one another.
I absolutely thus far I agree. Okay, so is it final thought time?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. All right, so here's the teaser for final thought. And I want to put this out there so that the folks who are watching live in the chat room can type their thoughts on this. Is let's look at how do you manage the friction of adding this to a daily routine? I just went through that scenario where it's like you're stealing 30 minutes here, 20 minutes there to pursue your thing. Now we're adding another 20 minutes of this this meditation exercise on top of it. How do you fit it into your day, and or how have you not? What kind of frictions have you run into? Um, can you do this anywhere, right? And if
Hmm.
so, how so? If not, why not? While you contemplate that, leaners, I will talk for another minute and a half, or Rob and I will talk for another minute and a half about some other people who make this show possible. And those people happen to be us. We make this show possible. We make things, and then we think about the things that we make. We bring those thoughts into the show. And the thing that I want to point you at this week that is very near and dear to my heart is the Ann Arbor Comic Arts Festival, which is happening June 14th, 15th, and 16th, 2019. But specifically, the Kids Comics Award. So, Rob, you've been part of the Kids Comics Awards ceremony at A2CAF.
Yeah, it is a lot. Okay, so I mean, there's a lot of angles on this where people who take part in sort of tabling and provide other kind of service to the Ann Arbor Comic Arts Festival can be, included, brought in, and there's kind of like a show is being created that all of a sudden you might have a role in, which is this.
Beware, should you come to the Ann Arbor Comic Arts Festival, you may find yourself presenting an award and having to do skits.
It's super fun, and exactly, that's what happened. It was presenting an award, and it's delightful because you have I mean, so kids vote for their favorite comics in different categories and artists, and it's a lot of fun to celebrate this work and celebrate what kids are recognizing and all that. It's honestly the topic, the energy, the community, it's super awesome.
Yeah. And the Kids Comics Award this is going to be the 7th annual, and what it is it's I work with a team of jurors, and we collect a list of all the comics that were produced for kids in the year previous, and then we put together a ballot of finalists. And well, actually, I have almost nothing to do with actually putting together the final list of finalists, as a cartoonist myself. And then we put that ballot online, and kids can vote for their favorites. This year, we're doing something different in that we've started an open nomination form before we make the ballot, where the kids can actually vote on what their favorite books of 2018 were before we actually make the final ballot. They're going to inform who the final nominees will be. Reason being is that every year somebody comes along and says to me, "Hey, how come my book wasn't on the list?" Well, this is an opportunity for you. This is a shout out to all cartoonists who made a book in 2018. If you're listening to my voice now, go to a2caf.com/KC Awards. Tell your fans about this awards, or about this award ceremony and this ballot. And then you could get on the ballot by mobilizing your fan base. Even if a few people vote, that'll give us a signal that somebody out there is reading this thing, right? So once again, that's a2caf.com/KC Awards. And the final nominees will be announced sometime in May. Yes, in May. So, and then the winners will be announced at the ceremony that Rob was talking about, where we usually have puppet shows, skits. In the link on the page that I just listed, there is a link to a YouTube video of Ben Hatke and me eating a really gross sandwich together, and then he spins me around over his head like a continental soldier. It's the award ceremony is a good time.
Yes, there are many fun skits and plots and whatnot. It's a joy, and plus, there's Lego statues, right? I mean,
that's right. Yeah, the trophies are custom Lego minifigs. Rob, wonderful. You make a game.
I do, and it's called "This Panda Needs You." I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and see if I can play it while I describe it. Switching it up. So, "This Panda Needs You" is a game that my wife and I designed together. Kate Shields-Stenzinger, she's been on the show, and we do another show of our own and all that stuff. But this game was a thing that we wanted to make together, and have like a fun, mellow, like definitely an early ages thing as far as helping with pattern matching and skill development, interacting with the touchscreen and all that kind of stuff, and color shape recognition there. But we've noticed that it doesn't really stop at the young ones. Like, I mean, people of all ages we've seen, going demoing at events and all that stuff. It's a mellow game, right? There's so many games that are not about that. They're about being intense and explodey. This is not that at all, right? You have a panda who encounters shapes that they're in the pattern they're supposed to be for just a second or two, and then a cloud comes along, knocks them all down, and then it's up to you to help the panda put things to the way they should be. And as you do this, the panda celebrates and dances, and the music gets more upbeat and vibrant, letting you know, hey, you're on the right track. So it's encouraging and playful. That you can play essentially through 10 rounds before the panda goes back home to just chill out, relax, right? Perfect break in the action to say, all right, cool, give me my phone back, little one. This is a good, yeah, a good thing. So then let's see, there's over 50 levels. They get more and more complex, more and more challenging, but still in that whole mellow, like low pressure situation where you're doing the pattern recognition. The little panda actually even remembers what the shapes are supposed to be, but it's de-emphasized. It's kind of small and over the panda's head. So I'm using that pattern and putting things back to the way they should be. And you can see that, there we go. Got the little blocks matched. Panda's happy. Moving on to the next puzzle. And one other thing I just wanted to share. So let's say you have this panda needs you, and you're like, I'm always like starting at these basic puzzles. You can always hit the sun and hit the little random dice, and it'll jump ahead like further in the puzzle list. And then boom, harder puzzles right there waiting for you, just with just go ahead and touch the sun and then hit that random forward thing. You can go forward one, you can go back. There's it's meant to be a really friendly low pressure game. Anyway, learn more about it all the platforms it's on. It's on phones and tablets and desktops. And check it out at this-panda.com.
And if you purchased it, giving it a review wherever you purchased it helps more people find it. And that doesn't cost you anything but a few minutes of your time. Just say, this is great. My kids love it. I love it. I feel almost as relaxed as when I do art meditation when I play this game. If if you are here because you like the way we think about stuff more than the stuff we make, that's fair enough. You know, this show is the thing that we make. And we have more things like it, self-contained videos that you can download at the price of your choosing, even free, at leanintoart.com/workshops. That's leanintoart.com/workshops. If you're watching this video on YouTube, giving it a thumbs up helps more people find the show. And if you're listening to it in a podcatcher like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, giving it a 5-star review wherever you listen to it helps more people find it as well. And we thank everybody who has been doing those things. It means a lot to us.
Thank you. Okay, final thought. Right.
Yeah. So how do you fit this into your daily routine or your life? You know, one of the frictions that I'm running into right now is that I'm currently packing up my entire house to move house. And it is more difficult than usual to even have an art routine, much less introduce a new thing into an art routine. But I mean, there's like a couple times in the week where a little bit of waiting is sort of budgeted in. Like I have like certain appointments that happen at the same time every week, and like classes and things like that, where it's like I could show up like 15 minutes early and then I can do a little bit of like mindful drawing while I'm waiting there. That's one hack that I found for that, is just like be more punctual. Which, you know, means I don't show up in a panic. It means that I also have a way to clear my head before engaging in some kind of an appointment where my full presence is necessary.
Wow. So actually, that is a really good point. This does have a sort of time management aspect to it. That's a pretty huge component. And like you just said, by being punctual as a side effect, all of a sudden you have a little bit of space. And I assume you mean like arrive early, right?
Yeah.
How interesting. That takes a lot of pressure off, and functionally has other uses too.
Right. I'm not showing up and just like taking my coat off and drop my bag. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm sorry I'm late. I hate being in that headspace. So it has, double benefit. I have time to warm up to the meeting or the session. But we got some good stuff in the chat too while we were doing our ad. So Mark Nelson says, I do a mindful minute moment with each of my 5 art classes. We will be doing this exercise next. Thanks, Jerzy and Rob. Well, thank you, Mark. That's awesome. I'm glad that this was actually useful. And I will look forward to hearing how well it works in a classroom environment, because I happen to teach classes too. And I'm dubious about doing this with 12-year-olds, but who knows? Maybe. Shadowing Tronics adds, you could bring a small pad with you when you're at the doctor's office or waiting at the DMV, when your time is already away from the work, or even while the computer boots up. Yeah, this is something that can be like structured at any point when you're just waiting for something to happen. It's a form of being patient with the moment and waiting, and being focused while you're waiting, right? Rather than like looking at your phone and flipping through Instagram or something.
Yeah, it's and if you are maybe having your phone in hand, you can launch a drawing app instead. That's always an option. And that is interesting. And let's see, there's a low pressure entry too. As long as you have the thing, like, I mean, I do carry essentially note cards in a little note card wallet with me all the time. And then actually I'm in the habit now in the last like 6 months or so where I carry 2 pens always. Because essentially 2 is 1 and 1 is none, right? Where I always, having a pen on you, it often gets, borrowed. There's a need for a pen, and here I am with a pen. So I'm like, of course, here I have a pen. And then I'm like, no, I don't have a pen. And anyway, but so here you are with the stuff, and it's low pressure because or is that another way? Is that another thing to wrestle with a little bit, or to negotiate where, because making time for this one of the ways where I buy time or rationalize it is to say, well, I can probably share this.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and it's, that's a thing.
Yeah, I agree. That definitely incentivizes, right? So like, uh, I signed up for the Super Sweet Bowling League again. Anybody who's been following me on Instagram has seen. And part of the rationalization of spending the money and the time on going bowling once a week was, well, I get to do the art drops again, and those are really fun, right?
Sure.
And when I do the art drops, then I get to do this cool Instagram post where I did like show this cute drawing of cute animals being cute, and then I show where the hiding place is and invite people to find it, Um, and like there again, we get to that performance aspect. Like for instance, one of the guys at the bowling alley, one of the people who work there, came over to our lane because something was wrong with our screen. He's like, "I'm really sorry, guys. It's gonna be 5 minutes." And then he looked down and saw me painting the latest one I did of Lau and Maggie in a boat. He's like, "Oh, you're the guy." And I have to admit, that feels kind of cool, right? Like you're the guy who's like leaving those drawings all over the place. He was delighted by it, right? Like he wasn't like, "Oh, you're the guy who keeps leaving garbage around here." So I get
that could have happened.
that could have.
I'm glad it didn't.
Me too. But I have to also add to that there's things I do for my own health that I don't share publicly. Like when I run, I feel no desire to be like, "Hey, I just ran a couple miles. Hooray." I feel that. I feel that hooray, and I'm glad I did it. But there's nothing feels performative about that particular thing. So in my head, the way I'm trying to bucket this is I'm like, okay, this goes in the bucket of the same area of when you're running. Something you do purely for you, and for your future and for your health and for your, well-being kind of thing.
Mm. Okay. So
So
it's
I bucket it with
primarily
self-care.
okay. Self-care, personal health, personal maintenance. Interesting. All right.
Uh,
So then it's that's not the thing that you would use to say, all right, yep, definitely going to make sure I have time to do this,
no,
because I could totally see
no.
doing that.
No, I mean, I haven't been doing it every day because of that, the frictions. However, Carrie is in the chat. She says, I don't do this every time I'm going to draw ink, but if I am transitioning from day job to creative work, I find it extremely helpful to get loose. Most weekday nights, I do this for 5 to 10 minutes. So there's that compromise and that kind of trade-off that one can do. Well, just do it for less time. Don't do it for the full 20 minutes.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point too. I mean, there's probably a space somewhere that's like, okay, this is budgetable from a time perspective. That's cool. Let's see. Well, what do you think?
Did we do a podcast?
I think we did. So Ed, are you? I guess I have one more question for you. Like, so we did. Are you? Do you feel relaxed when you do this?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, more relaxed than I was.
Okay.
So I don't know what real relaxed looks like. Well, maybe I'll find out.
So I was watching my heart rate.
Oh, yes,
yeah.
You get data. Nobody in the audience is surprised, right? Rob was collecting data. Let's hear it. Did what happened?
Oh, well, I mean, it's I've been under the weather, and so when I am battling something like that, I battle so much. Battle metaphors all over the place. Gosh, whatever. Love is a battlefield. Pat Benatar is in my head all the time. Anyway, no, it's not. Things are pretty great, but otherwise, my heart's a bit elevated when heart rate is in when under the weather, and so I was like, I don't know, is this going to do anything? Who knows, right? So I set a few supplies around me, sat down. James Burke Connections started streaming. It's on YouTube. So many episodes of it, and then started doing the drawings like I shared. And it was, I mean, literally minute by minute, heart rate dropped,
Really?
And yeah. And it went from like elevated sick level to like more and more mellow. And it didn't, keep plummeting like to like sleep level heart rate, right? But it worked. It's like patterns of breathing change, posture, relaxing. All of a sudden, there's all these side effects for me that happen with sketching, especially without the pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
the data backed it up for me.
Awesome. So we have anecdotal and we have physical data. That's great. Objective data of what happens when you draw like a child again. That's wonderful. Well, thank you, Rob, for this one. I think this turned out okay.
Oh, this is a great topic. We should totally revisit it, and hear from the folks in the chat who are try ongoing experiments and all that stuff, and then share our own ongoing exploration with this.
Yeah,
be a fun one to revisit.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, we should record the show weekly on Thursdays at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Eastern Daylight Savings Time. I forget which one we're on right now. Eastern Time. Or 9 p.m. Central, and we stream it live on YouTube and then collect it as a podcast at leanintoart.com and patreon.com/leanintoart. We'll be back next week. Until then, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy Drozd on Instagram.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger, also of leanintoart.com, and I'm Rob Stenzinger on Instagram.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
All right, I'm turning off the stream. Thanks, everybody.